It's an Indianapolis.
That
right
piece of
there.
property had been assembled for a
I
long time.
watched the council.
So does the
meeting
water,
night.
is your source Ohio?
Well,
What is the
partially,
water
I
source?
watched
No, they've got
I didn't watch everything.
one
Yeah,
that
let's go
pulls
there.
it from the surface of the
We'd
Ohio
pull
River.
Okay.
The other one pulls
That's
it
what Gary
through
was
the
telling.
riverbank.
I mean,
of the Ohio.
once you lose it,
Oh, there.
you've lost it. You ain't going.
We're going live, so
Going live, look alive.
So y'all been telling her.
we are live. Call a meeting
That's worse.
to order for November the 16th at 4:31 p.m. Approval of the minutes of the October 19th, 2023 meeting. Would I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, motion from Steve. Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Very.
Barry. All right, on the financial statements tonight, you have them in your packet. Everything is still progressing very positive. I'm not gonna spend any time going into the detail because we've got several things on the agenda that we need to get into. But they are continuing very positive, revenues continuing above budget, and everything's under control there. So I want to on the first item on the agenda, review the billing policy rates between city and county. I want to just defer that to you, Greg, to spend some time on figuring that out for us. That's that intercompany policy I mentioned to you at the council meeting Monday night that we need to look at.
Okay, go into some more detail for me. Give me some more detail about what you.
Well, it's just when we have intercompany connections between North Marshall Water and Paducah Water and all of that, and the Tim dug in and found out that the rates are from 05 or something like that.
Contract.
Right.
And
Yeah.
contracts are out,
We need to renew them.
just need to renew them,
Gotcha.
okay?
Okay.
So. All right, Chad, good to have you here with us tonight. And Mr. Bob Miller is back with the Kentucky Rural Water Association relative to the rate study there. Chad, did you bring some drawings to look at that Lone Valley Road proposal?
Yes, sir.
And also, where do we stand on the PB Cloud easement and that issue? I know we're having some problems with that. Have we made any movement on that, or has Greg been involved, or?
Which one do you want me to tackle first?
Okay, let's go with the PB Cloud easement issue, because I think you and Tim did some research and.
We've done a little legwork since then. The short, I'll give you the whole version of the story, but we've been trying to get an easement negotiated with the marshals for several months now. Had several discussions with them. We've had some open doors at different times that have closed on us in the end, unfortunately. We've gone through several rounds of meeting with them, texting them, and going back and forth. Actually offered them some compensation in the form of service setting, new meter setting on the property, as well as some clearing and some ditch work to be done to no avail. We haven't been able to get these next. So as of this week, in our discussions, we started entertaining another plan, another alternative that moved the line to the south across what we understand is the Waldrop property right there south of the Marshalls, and run east and west across the Waldrop property. There's another property to the east of them before we get over to David's Lane and then get back up to our whole Calvert City zone where we ultimately want to get to. I haven't spoken with Mr. Waldrop yet. I spoke with his father today on site. I think Tim had a discussion with him as well. It sounds like there's an open door there. They're not expressing any concerns or opposition to it right now. But I haven't spoken directly with Mr. Walter about his feelings for an easement. You know, they did say they probably wouldn't tie on. They've got a geothermal and groundwater well system right now, so they probably wouldn't tie on to the system as a customer, but doesn't sound like they'd have an issue. From a negative standpoint, it does add to pretty significant ditch crossings. It wouldn't be hard from a construction standpoint to cross the ditches. If long term, there's going to be a couple areas that are going to be added that are going to be under ditches with some pretty significant flow on them. If something were to occur, it would just be a maintenance type thing. That's why we didn't choose that line to begin with, because we were trying to avoid those two ditch crossings.
Okay.
So that was what was desirable about being on Marshalls. Now that we've hit that roadblock, the contractor is to that point now on the PV Cloud Road. They've worked the last several days and they've made it up to the end of PV Cloud Road this afternoon. They're gonna set their hydrant here within the hour probably, and they'll be ready to either move back to Highway 62 and work on that section, or to go east across the Walter property, or whichever property becomes available first, I guess, to get over to Old County Road.
Okay.
And that's our recommendation. The project, as I mentioned in my email, is still viable without the tie-in at Old Calvert Road. However, it's undesirable from a maintenance standpoint operation.
It doesn't give us a loop, right?
Then you, so you're gonna result in some lower quality, water quality issues, a lot of maintenance and flushing the line out on periodic intervals, just to keep that water fresh at the end of the line on PV Cloud. There's not a whole lot of usage on that line.
Yeah. Okay, so
We're more than happy to help out with that effort.
right now you're gonna contact the other people for the easement to,
That's your all's approval, you know.
Right,
Really wanted
okay.
to talk to y'all first and get your direction on that, but we're more than happy to engage those folks and talk to them about an easement. We're, from a design standpoint, we're not dealing with hydraulic change to the project, so I don't think we're talking about a design change or design modification to our contract. So it will be something we can as built as part of the construction process. And then, so, I mean, for design feasibility, we wouldn't need, you know, any kind of design.
Did you say there was another property besides the Waldrop?
There is another one. I apologize. I don't have their name
Okay,
with me.
but you need an easement
It's
there
a-
too?
It's a CRP field back there, undeveloped property.
Okay.
It doesn't appear that they're doing anything with that land, so the water line would only be a benefit to them if they ever did something with that property. And it would be adjacent to the existing ditch that is the north property line of that property, so I can't see there would be an impact.
Okay.
From a easement standpoint. like that.
From a construction standpoint, monetarily, it's not gonna make a lot of
From a
difference.
construction standpoint, being as we got across two of those ditches, we're probably gonna add, I'm gonna guesstimate maybe $10,000 at most to the contract. A little bit of footage, but it's not a significant increase. in
But
cost.
did I understand you right, given the new plan, that we would have a dead end? We're not gonna look.
As of right now, there would be a dead end.
No, we avoid like the plague, ever doing any eminent domain. But it's certainly an option.
And I say they could add $10,000 to the project, that's due to the ditch crossings and the length. However, it's gonna be less tree there. So there's gonna be a little give and take there that I wasn't counting for there, because they won't be going through the woods. So there's almost 1,000 feet of tree clearing that was part of the original plan that was bid. That won't occur if we move the line to the south across the waters. So it's probably wash. Honestly.
So the real downside is really just, we're not getting a loop on it, so we're gonna have maintenance issues.
If you go across the Walter property, if that's successful going that way, you will have to move.
Okay,
You will have to.
Plan B has the loop. in it.
Plan B has,
Okay,
the
okay, I thought-
negative is you got the water line underneath a pretty significant blue line stream
Right.
ditch at two locations.
Okay.
So,
And you said that's just ongoing maintenance down the road where you have to maintain and make sure the ditches.
yeah, we'll have a minimum standard. We put those lines in 6 foot below the flow line of the ditch.
Okay,
So we account for some erosion to occur over time.
right.
And, you know, we're just based on history and experience, feel like 6 feet is a very good depth.
Okay.
Even in the 3 foot of cover or something like that.
Mr. Marshall is not doing Marshall, is it?
No. But otherwise, the line will actually be easier to maintain the route that we're going.
Besides the
Down-
2 ditch roads.
Right, beside the 2 ditch crossings, it'll be a whole lot easier to maintain
Okay,
going across the Walker property.
okay. So. Not worth the fight.
I think it's a positive step to move
It
that.
sounds that way.
Yeah, since we
Based
can't
on
go the other
other
way. So if
discussion
you can
we've
get the
had.
easements that direction.
We still have the one property owner we haven't spoken with, so there is an unknown there, but again, I can't see that negative associated with.
Yeah.
The water line. Across that.
Which one were you talking about that didn't give us the flushing? Is that the one across the,
The one that doesn't give us the pleasure, I wanna make sure I understand.
The easement,
yeah, the easement that doesn't give us the flushing?
No.
Or
Either
the
way-
easement that we'll have to flush?
Either way we go, if we get an easement, that will allow for the circulation of the
Okay.
water.
All
If
right.
we don't secure an easement on the east side of PB Cloud Lane, then that would negate any type of circulation of that water and you result in the dam. As long as we can secure an easement there between David Lane and PB Cloud Lane, then that would satisfy the goal of the project and get that circulation to that.
Do I hear a motion to authorize Chad to move towards the new easement location and see if he can get easements?
So moved.
Yeah, just a second. All right, all in favor, say aye. Okay, and Chad, we had couple of drawings. I know you were kind of mistaken on that, but on the well, I'm going just as blank as a goose. The other route I talked about, yeah.
But I want to make sure I'm up to speed. How far into the process did you all get with the Long Valley Road discussion? Have you
Well,
guys
Roger
discussed
had
that?
always talked to me when early on we started talking about it, was that he wanted to go up the road right directly across from where you come out there after you go after that the Lone Valley Road, and then go up the hill and go up around by his house and then go all the way across and then come back down by the interstate and tie in there so that you had a full loop
Yes, sir.
there and you had plenty of pressure to put in some fire meters for the people in that area,
Mhm.
in that loop.
Yeah.
And so is that the direction we are now looking at?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
sir. My misunderstanding on the front end, when Tim and I talked about Lone Valley Road, we were discussing it about, hey, we've already got a project in the system at the PAD office for the Lone Valley Road Extension Interconnect. So whenever I went online to look at that project and pulled the profile, there was a Lone Valley Road Interconnect Extension project. However, it was on North Lone Valley Road going from Fifth Avenue up to around where the well field is.
Right,
And tying into the
Other
Water
direction.
District, other direction.
right.
whenever
But
I-
you guys were talking about
When I
right
sent
direction.
the proposal to Tim, he said, hey, give me a call. We need to talk about this. And the Lone Valley Road, what I call Lone Valley Road South, the loop coming across from the liquor store
62.
and Dairy Queen across 62
Yes, sir.
and around to Little Rock. That project is not in the system at the
Right.
PAD office.
Right.
Which isn't a big deal. It's just a minor step in the process to get that in the system for approval at the PAD office at the Water Management. Agency. But that's what we presented at this time.
So we had the PV cloud already at pad,
PV Cloud was already
already
in
in
there.
there.
That's
So
what
we
got
didn't have this
funded.
particular, okay.
So
Yeah,
the process that we're gonna do now is got really good bids for the PV Cloud project, which resulted in about $600,000 of unfunded grant monies or grant monies that weren't allocated to anything. So we were looking for the best place to put those. Those grant monies are earmarked for getting water to unserved residents. So as long as the project funds go towards unserved residents, they can be used for that function.
And we're not, are we serving anybody south of 62 there? We, no, so they're all on
All of that new extension would be new,
new customers. That's awesome.
And we'll pick up more customers obviously on that leg
Right.
than we would on the north
Right.
Valley Road section. through there, so that would be even more beneficial and more in line with the grant intent that we received from CAD. So it lines up very well with the project intent. Project budget, we've done some estimates through that section. Feel like there's adequate funds there to build that section and also possibly do some of that work on Highway 95. The team was talking about potentially doing some water service improvements on that road too. So we would bid it out all at one time. And then if we get similar bid and unit pricing to what we got the first time, we can do a complete project. If we don't, then we can pull back a little bit as needed, just to fit it within the grant funds. However you guys decide to approach, move forward there.
Okay, yeah, so I think that clears up the direction we wanted to go and was looking.
South
to
instead of
go.
north.
South Long Valley Road.
Yeah, go around, but
We'll leave North Long Valley Road alone. It'll still be in the system.
There you go.
We'll just add this project for South Long Valley Road into the system so that it can be done through the grant.
That's my fault is it is even. I was
We've all.
I was under the assumption that that end is what was in the system.
In
I
fact,
mean,
we've all
every
looked at
time
that.
I looked
I
at it,
forgot
I
that
looked
too.
at. I seen Long Valley Road and I never gave it
You're always
any,
thinking down there.
yeah, I was always thinking out there.
Yep.
This it would benefit the Grand Oaks area.
This is
That's
what you're talking
over
about.
there, and it would help out, with any demands on that east side, south side of the system. It would help out by creating that loop, give us some stronger water flow and pressure through that area.
Right. okay.
Yep.
All right, that's what I had on the agenda to talk about with you, Chad, on that. Was there any other questions or anything maybe for anybody got?
Just as a brief update, the PV Cloud project's going very well. Right now, the contractor is making very good headway. The line is in on Mulberry Lane, on Mulberry Road rather, all the way across 62. And I said, as of the end of the day, we'll have to get the Lab Road done. So it'll be the section along Highway 62, going over to Bond Chapel Road to loop that section in. And then whatever we get through, going across Old Calvert Road would be the remaining section on that project. So the line, our intent, once we get to the end of PV Cloud, and then over to Bond Chapel Road, and the contractor can go ahead and test that and get disinfect and get everything online. So if residents wanted to go ahead and pay their tap on fee and tie on, it would be available for them at that time. We can put it online in different phases if we need to.
Right.
We wouldn't have to wait to get over to Old Calvert Road before we put it on into the system.
Back to South Lone Valley Road. Bidding, all that process is gonna take months, right, before we get to,
We will have to go through the funding.
So, we're so through the winter, and so maybe a spring project, summer project. Is what your hope is,
Yeah,
or
potentially,
could
we
be
will have
longer?
to cross Texas Gas on that section as well.
Yeah.
That was-
Greg loves dealing with
that. We'll have that, the cable transportation cabinet, we'll have to get a permit from them and the Division of Water, so. The holidays do slow the permitting process down,
Sure.
unfortunately.
What about the grant money? Is there any concerns about the grant money being available to us? Is that already, you're earmarked? Okay, great.
It's
Okay,
already earmarked, and our intention would be to combine the Lone Valley project with PV Cloud, so.
yes,
There wouldn't be another assistance agreement required or anything of that nature. It would all be rolled.
it's all the money out of the same,
Right.
okay, to the same. Okay,
Isn't there a little small fire hydrant up there on the other end of Long Valley by the old,
Yeah, there's 2-inch that goes across there on this lower end.
out there by the pool place?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we ran that 2-inch back there so Jerry's pools could have water.
So
And
we,
we had to put a little flush hydrant there on the end of it.
was that where we was high in?
No,
No, we're gonna replace that 2-inch.
that 2-inch will be gone.
All the way around.
with what, how many,
6-inch. I mean,
So from the fire plug at Little Rock, is it already 6-inch?
There's a 4-inch.
4-inch.
that goes down to
Right.
Little Rock right there.
so Bob, this is
Those
us
4 inches.
beyond Calvert.
Extend to that.
We're already
Okay.
out. And these are ones that'll continue to cause us to extend beyond our ceilings. We had a pre-conversation about. Similar to what you're talking about a little bit, but we do what we
Here's the
can.
line that we just did
Mhm.
last year.
Yeah.
To replace that section.
Yeah, Texas Gas is right here.
Yes, sir.
It's deep right there too.
That's a good thing. It's a lot cheaper to go over the top of that thing than it is to go under. we're hoping.
Yeah, it's pretty deep right there. They had it dug up a few years ago, checking the sleeves on it.
Mhm.
And it's way down there.
Good.
Of course, they poured some concrete in there too. Okay, can be difficult. Thank you.
All right, Chad.
You all have any questions anytime? Let me know. I've got the signed documents that you sent to me.
Thank you, yeah.
So we can go process.
Let me have a copy of that just for the file.
No, you're caught up. This is the old map. Going down the road section. We brought that just for reference.
Okay.
In case I needed to. Apologize. I'm not saying. And that's the new map that shows the
Shows extent.
of the new project on South. Lake.
Okay, good. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chad.
I did tell you about my conversation with Kelly and the line out. Did you see on the,
We talked about
on
that.
the resolution?
Yeah. Mhm.
So far? I mean, Kelly thought it would be no problem.
Okay.
He didn't think there would be.
Discuss the audit. About that.
But- Well, it's not really their problem. We probably need to tell, have we talked at all, Gene, about the audit that's gonna be required? Because we're gonna spend more than $750,000 this year, this fiscal year.
Mm.
Well, because we're spending more than $750,000 of these KIA funds, we're gonna have to have a separate audit of those. Just required by the feds. If you spend more than $750 in a fiscal year, you gotta do it. And so that's part of the contract. And he'll be poking when we come to the end of the year, he'll be saying, you gotta do a separate audit. I don't know what's involved in that audit. I don't know how much money's involved in getting that audit done. I can't imagine that it would be terrible because there's not that many items and it's not that big of a deal. However, our auditors will have to do a separate audit of those particular funds.
Yeah, it's called a single audit and they are here right now working. So I discussed that with them today.
Okay.
And they said he already has sent a note. I mean, they're very aware that when they come next year, they will be doing that. I told them we will probably hit that mark. So,
Yep.
and I asked them, I said, so when do you do it? And they said, we do it when we come and do your other audit. And I was like, okay, works for me.
It'll be this time next year. To be back on the fiscal year of the city, and it's called a single,
Audit. Mhm.
so it's like a add-on.
So I did talk to them today.
The assistance agreement, $750,000 grant.
And they've got enough of my signatures on those documents that will do it.
No hiding.
No hide.
All right. All right, Mr. Miller, if you would bring us and kind of review your information that you sent us with us and sort of give us an overview of what you're talking about here and what you added based on the previous meeting and that kind of thing. So
Last time when we talked about the objectives that I understand that the board is looking for your utilities, your big strategic objectives. You're looking for reliable service so that every day, day in, day out, folks get, predictable, high quality service. That it's sustainable over the long period of time. You're making the investments to keep this utility going in perpetuity. You want your utility to be resilient so that when bad things happen, you can still keep service going and get it back going. And that you also wanted that to be affordable. 4 things: reliable, sustainable, resilient, and affordable. The good news for this community, I won't say that you're uniquely positioned, but you're certainly positioned in pretty rare company. And that is you all have options. And you can tailor your decisions based on what you believe is best for this community. You've got choices. There is no one cookie cutter approach that you really don't have an option to change from. You do have options. on how, in terms of how you use water funds, how you use sewer funds, and how you use tax funds. Second thing is that you're not facing any imminent cash crisis. So you've got the time to make good decisions. Now, and the third thing is that you've got a committed board of directors of people who are knowledgeable about water systems. You know, it's oftentimes a city council doesn't have access to a board like this. And frankly, water and sewer is not in the wheelhouse typically of a city council. So this city council has that as an advantage. So that's good news. What we did last time, as I looked at it, we did two things. One is that we said, what's the, it's depending on which way you want to look at it, what's the best case scenario as far as achieving all of your financial objectives, which correspondingly is what's your worst case scenario in terms of high rates. And we said that is if you wanted to achieve every possible appropriate financial objective for the water and sewer system without any future infusions of tax funding, that you'd be looking for additional annual water revenues of about $350,000 and additional sewer revenues of about $500,000. That meant a rate increase of about 17.8% on the water side and about 82% on the sewer side. Again, that is achieving best case objectives with worst case rate possibility. But you all, we spent a lot of time talking about what were the policy alternatives that you had. And so I have gone through and identified 8 of those. Some of these we hit pretty hard last time. And so we're not going to spend a whole lot, but there's 4 of them that I want to do a deep dive on. The first one, I'm going to go through and remind you of what the policy questions were. What investments will be needed to ensure that the water and sewer systems are capable of providing reliable service on an ongoing basis, sustainable for the long-term future, resilient to respond to emergencies and disasters, and then implicit with that, and affordable to your customers? Second question is, what's the appropriate balance between rates and taxes for funding the water and sewer systems going forward? Third is, what's the appropriate method to allocate revenues and expenses between the water and sewer systems? Fourth, should depreciation be included in the revenue requirements in order to provide cash reserves for emergencies and unplanned capital improvements? Fifth, this is an alternative, should you use historical costs, backwards looking, or should you use budgeted costs, forward looking, to develop the water and sewer rates? Number 6, if the projected rate increases are substantial, how might they be ramped in over time to bring water and sewer revenues up to sufficient levels? Number 7, how do current and proposed water rates compare with those adjacent comparably sized communities? And then finally, how will this issue of affordability for low-income customers be addressed to ensure that they have access to safe drinking water? And so with that, what I'd like to do is go through each of these. Some I'll do a shallow dive on, some I'll do a deep dive on, but I also want to spend some time on that rate comparison. Okay. First question, what investments will be needed going forward to ensure that water and sewer systems are capable of providing reliable service on an ongoing basis, sustainable for the long-term future, and resilient to respond to emergencies and disasters? You'll recall that I spent some time last time talking about how rate studies are typically just a snapshot in time. How much do we need what do rates need to be today to take care of operations today? And recall that I was nudging you towards, that while that is absolutely necessary, you also want to take the long-term view. where do we need to be in 5 and 10 years? And what are the investments that are going to be needed then? And how do we plan for that? You'll recall that I said that as far as identifying, all of the investments that are needed for over the next 5 to 10 years, you need something called a facilities plan. You need professional engineers to come in and look at what are your current demands, what are your future demands, what are your current capabilities, what are your future requirements, what are your current revenue and debt levels, what do they need to be going forward in the future? You used as an example, as kind of a placeholder in that discussion, if we needed a new water treatment plant. And we talked about how do you go about building the financing for that in place. And we laid out the document, that draft financial plan. We've reviewed that and included this in the report. But in all of this, what I'm going to encourage you to do is, after you get through this rate study process, start laying out, not just how do we get through, this year and next year, but where do we want to be 5 years from now? Where do we want to be 10 years from now? What investments have to be made? And what service level capabilities will that get us? And in all of that, you need a really robust financial plan. You need to know what are your inputs, because again, nobody's got a crystal ball on what interest rates are going to be, what's inflation going to be, and things like that. You need a model that you can try out different alternative scenarios. You need to know what your income statement is going to look like over your next 5 to 10 years. How much cash is going to be generated from operations? What's your capital program going to look like in today's dollars and in future dollars? How long will those new assets live? And then what's your financial plan going to be in terms of sources and uses of existing and newly borrowed funds? So that's essentially, though, outside the scope of this. This is just laying out a response to that question. The next one, I'm going to give you the real quick answer on this and spend a little bit of time, but not a whole lot. It's what's the appropriate balance between rates and taxes for funding the water and sewer systems going forward? The simple answer is the right balance between water and sewer rates and taxes to fund the water and sewer system is, the correct answer is whatever you all decide that you want it to be. Now, many utilities say that there's a benefit from having a water system. There's a benefit to customers of having a sewer system, and the people that get the benefit from it should pay for it. That's the simple answer. The real world is more complex than that. And that has to do with whether you have objectives that you want to focus on economic development and making sure you have low water and sewer costs for your largest users, or if you want affordability concerns top and focus on those low end rates. But the fact of the matter is, you can do whatever you want. What you might want to consider, though, is let your water rates and your sewer rates to fund it as if affordability is not an issue, and then use your tax rates rather than to fund infrastructure projects. Use it to fund your low income customers, because not everybody needs a break on their water bill. The folks at the bottom end of the economic ladder need more help than the others do. If you use tax dollars to fund an infrastructure project, then everybody gets the benefit of it. Well, there's an argument that that's a really, really good thing, but some folks have more need of that benefit than others do. And so, again, that's a decision that is up to you all to make. The good news is that, and this does make you all in very, very rare company, that you have the discretion to make that decision. because in most communities, the tax base is so strapped, the water system is so strapped, the sewer system is so strapped, they really don't have any good choices. You all have, in my opinion, a portfolio of good choices. Pick the one that works best for you all. The next one, this one I want to do a little bit of a deep dive on, is we talked about what's the appropriate method to allocate revenues and expenses between the water and sewer systems. Well, for the most part, there's on the revenue side, you've got two types of revenues. Revenues associated from bills, and those are called operating revenues. Then you have non-operating revenues, which would be things like interest income or late payment penalties or things like that. And so with that, your accounting folks use their best professional judgment to break out revenues and expenses. But to do that, they have to make certain assumptions and certain decisions. When I looked at how they did it, it was very reasonable and appropriate. But while they're making those decisions, those are decisions that you all frankly can participate in. And you can say, okay, for example, I want to control my future sewer rate increases. And so I'm going to assign all utility non-operating revenues, like late payment penalties and things like that, and interest income, all that's going to go to the sewer system. And then I'm going to take all of the administrative and general expenses and the customer accounts expenses, what you and I might typically in our businesses call overhead type expenses. I want all of those to go to the water system. You all can make that decision. I did that, and using my best judgment as far as what I thought was most appropriate, going through the income statements of each. And so with that, and this again is only touching one thing at a time, and keeping the expectation that you're covering operating expenses, debt service expenses, and depreciation expenses. You can go on water, you could leverage that from 17.8% to 21.9%, while taking the sewer rate increase from 81.9% down to 63.2%. So you've got that alternative. That's the first alternative, is shifting non-operating revenues and overhead expenses among water and sewer, where you're moving the non-operating revenues from water to sewer, and you're moving the overhead expenses from sewer to water. Okay, so that's your first option. Next option, this is the big bots of all. Okay, this is the one I want you to pay attention to most, and that is the strategic question: should depreciation be included in the revenue requirements to provide cash reserves for emergency repairs and unplanned capital improvements? Now, again, there's reasons to include depreciation. However, many municipalities, I would say most municipalities, choose to exclude depreciation. I recommend that you include it, but most cities, most towns in Kentucky exclude depreciation from their water and sewer rates. Okay. For example, the largest wastewater system, largest sewer system in the state is Louisville, Jefferson County Metropolitan Sewer District. They do not include depreciation in their sewer rates. They simply don't. Louisville Water, for example, does include it. So with that, that's a choice that you all have, and it is probably the single most significant choice that you have.
I hate to interrupt, but are you saying not that by disregarding depreciation, we're not considering replacement of equipment in the calculation of rates? Is that what you're?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that instead, that when you go to replace equipment,
Yeah.
or, large capital items,
Right.
that you would be doing that either from grant funds or debt funds. You
Okay.
would not be doing it on a pay-as-you-go basis.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
which is a way to do this. This has the single biggest impact. You can get by with no rate increase on water, and your rate increase on sewer would fall by half, from 81.9% to 41.5%. Now, obviously, this is not free. This is basically one of the most strategically significant policy decisions that you all can make. But I want to show you what that is. But again, this is separate and apart from the other decision. These question number 3 and question number 4 are evaluated separately. They could be evaluated together, but I want to wait and see what direction you all want to take on that.
So let me understand what you're saying. We don't include depreciation expense when we figure up our rates.
No, we did.
We
No,
do.
no.
It's in our budget. I mean, in our.
And you're saying that's,
It's in your budget, but it's not in your rates for the most part.
Because our rates are lower. So
The way, see, y'all haven't
We
had
don't
a,
calculate our rates. We
You
don't
have-
do what he's doing.
yeah, you all haven't had a formal rate study in a long time. You all have indexed your rates.
yes,
And basically what has happened is in your indexing of your rates, your water system covers all of its operating expenses,
okay,
all of its debt service expenses,
yes,
and a portion of depreciation. In your sewer system, you haven't been covering, or you have been covering your operating expenses, your debt service, and almost none of your depreciation expenses.
That's another way to look at it. So we aren't calculating our rates based on our budget. So these things, if you neglected depreciation and water, you would have balanced your budget. That's, we're turning, our budget we're running right now is a negative 100, right? Negative 100, and that includes depreciation.
and Dan, review for me. We've been running negative 100 a while.
And last year we were budgeted positive, but this year because of the projects we're running and the depreciation, it took us to a negative in the budget.
So Greg's right. We include, when we review the financials, the depreciation.
We talk depreciation,
But we're
remember
not
that.
indexing our rates to do anything with that. That's just dumped in the seat of city
Yeah,
council.
the only reason we've been raising rates is if inflation goes up.
Yes, and the
But-
programmatic response to that.
Yeah.
And which is fine, it's appropriate. But what your approach has done is you're covering all your expenses on water and most, but not all of your expenses on sewer. Right, okay. Let's go to question number 5. There's another significant policy decision for you all. And this one is being a really, really unexpected result. And that is, should we use historical costs, which is, what came out of the audit, or should we use budgeted costs, forward-looking, to develop the rates? Let me chase rabbit for a second. You all are not bound in any way by the Public Service Commission, but I want to tell you how they do it. They use historical, and then they adjust the historical costs for known and measurable changes. For your all's rates, I used the budgeted cost, assuming that the budget took into account the known and measurable changes. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, but that's how I did it. So one of the questions that you all had last time was, what happens to the rate if we take out that forward look and only use historical costs? One of the things that you all do that's fairly significant is in your budget, you transfer a lot of sewer depreciation, 122,000 plus of sewer depreciation over to the water system. Okay. Compared to what the auditors say your depreciation should be. And so with that, if you strip out all the historical, or I'm sorry, all the budgeted increases, your water rates, you would not only have no increase, but your revenue requirement would fall below what your current requirements are. Now, I did not move that over to the sewer. I just stripped it back just to show you. But what happens is while your water rates nominally could go down, and it's always my advice, don't ever cut your rates, because you've already climbed that hill once. You don't want to climb it a second time. You know, and nobody remembers rate decreases. They only remember rate increases. But what would happen is the amount of rate increase you need would go significantly down on water and slightly up on sewer. And again, that's because of that adjustment that you all make in your budget on that. Okay. So with that.
Yeah, let me ask the question. Go back to that. You said that we charge water.
You charge in your budget process, you all move $122,286 from sewer depreciation to water depreciation. Okay. And so
From water to sewer.
no, from sewer to water.
From sewer to water.
Yeah. Okay. And so with that, again, the thing I want you to keep in mind on questions 3, 4, and 5 is those are your 3 biggest alternatives. And I'm showing you those discretely, separately. You can pick 3, you can pick 4, you can pick 5, you can pick 3 and 4, you can pick 4 and 5. You can pick 3 and 5, you can pick 3, 4, and 5.
I'll call for different analysis, right?
Well, it's easy analysis to do. It's that you just, you know, my advice is always focus on the policy and then see if you can afford it. Okay.
Got a quick question. We'll go back to our pre-conversation. You told me about Jefferson or Louisville. You tell me which
Right.
system has expanded out. Which
Mhm.
one?
That was, well, actually, both of them have expanded, but Louisville Water has expanded significantly faster than Louisville Jefferson County Metropolitan Sewer District.
Here's the point for you. You're here, good night. Chad's here trying to help us. We've got grants. We want to expand outside of our annex, but all we're expanding is water.
Mhm.
When you talk about expanding, they've expanded. They expanded water and sewer or just water?
They expanded both, but they expanded what in Jefferson County, they expanded water much faster than sewer. A lot of it depends on. So, for example, Louisville is getting water through the adjacent counties down to Glendale.
Oh, really?
They're not getting sewer down to Glendale.
Right.
Louisville's.
And so as you give us this analysis, I want you to keep that in mind. Are we picking up any sewer outside of our city annex? I mean, our city limits? Will we ever?
Well, we're working on Kentucky Dam.
You're right. That's true. So Kentucky Dam is a
But
state
it's
park.
in the city limits.
It's
Good point.
inside the city, but I mean, it's.
Well, I'm saying, as you think about this for us, have you recognize these things, do you?
Mhm.
You know, we're talking about, we want to keep growing and I don't care about growing, but taking care of our budget, getting our revenue so this man can do his job.
You have to put your finger on something. That's the difference now. By the change that made sewer a department. Used to be the board that
Yeah.
managed it directly. They can make some determinations independent of the city. City policy is that if we provide sewer to an area, we're annexing it.
Okay,
Okay, and that's in recognition that there's a higher capital expense for sewer install and different things like that than there is for water currently, and it is going to have more tax flow that go to support an expansion of sewer, and that's just a
so you're
policy
making some
statement.
water.
Yeah, it
outside
really
of the
doesn't-
county's not bad.
Yeah, so it
compared
doesn't
to-
really impact what we're reviewing here. It
Okay.
impacts operations of the city, and whether we, the question is chicken and egg. Are we gonna ever provide sewer outside of a city limit? And current thought is that we want to annex that because tax revenues are gonna be certainly involved with maintenance of sewer. That's why.
Okay. That's where
And
one.
then
sorry to-
it seems like you're shooting yourself in the foot and turning away revenue sources if you stick to that model.
Not all,
Possibly.
not
Yeah,
all
maybe.
incremental revenue sources are good. The thing that you, first of all, you never want to take on additional customers if it means that you have to increase your plan. Because that, it's one thing to extend your water distribution system, extend your sewer collection system. It's a whole nother thing to extend it and have to make an investment in your plan.
Infrastructure, yeah.
At your plant. Okay?
Okay.
The other thing is, frankly, sewer systems, sewer collection systems come with it an implied environmental liability. Because when water
We know about
leaks,
that.
yeah, when water leaks, that's not the end of the world. When sewer leaks, it is the end of the world.
Right.
And that's when you get to know the friends from the EPA. And so I want to come back to 3, 4, and 5, but I wanted to really
Thank
get
you.
that one pretty good.
Let me address that.
Okay. 6. What happens if projected rate increases are substantial? And what is a substantial rate increase? Well, for some folks, they might say, anything above 3 or 4% is a substantial rate increase. My advice is I typically use 20% is that is when you can go less than that, certainly, but that's when you get up, start approaching 20%, that's when you start ramping in rate increases. Somebody asked, have I ever had an 85% rate increase before? And the answer to that is yes, I have. Post Katrina, New Orleans. I did. And so with that, I had the choice. I took to the mayor and city council, or mayor and the board of directors, 5 years of 13% rate increases. And they said, no, that's too much, too fast. And I came back and said, how about 8, 10% rate increases? And they did. I don't think you all necessarily have to have an 80% rate increase. I think you've got some good options here that you can do. But if you had to have that, you'd be looking at on multiple increases. Now, 2 things to keep in mind, and all the folks that were good at math will jump on this right quick. The longer you implement your rate increases over, let's say you have 80% rate increase that you need and you only implement 10 the first year. Well, you're foregoing 70%. In the second year, you're getting 20%, you're foregoing 60, but that 10% is on top of the 10%. So you get the compounding effect. Yeah. So if you do 8 years of 10%, you get much more than 80% rate increase. So when you ramp things up, the ending rate increases, you end up with higher rates than you would have if you implemented it from the very beginning. But even though you end up with higher rates, you may not have picking up all that foregone revenue. And again, those are analysis we can do. I just want to remind you of what your options are there. You've had the same pair of glasses for too long when you go to shake your glasses to make a point and the lenses fall out. Okay. And so with that, if you were looking at 20% rate increase, that's where you might want to say, and we want to do that over 2 or 3 years. And how do you want to do it? There's 2 ways to do it. You can either take your revenue requirement and divide it by the number of years, or you can take the rate increase and divide it by 2 or 3 years. I always recommend doing the rate increase percent, but again, you can have a choice in that. Next question. Question number 7. How do current and proposed water rates compare with those of comparable utilities? Now, there's 2 things. One is what's a comparable utility? And the second one is, and is that data readily accessible? And then there's the third thing that drives you crazy is your community measures in terms of gallons or thousands of gallons, and a lot of communities do it in terms of cubic feet or hundreds of cubic feet. Second thing is water information is much more readily available than sewer information. If you're going to want sewer comparables, we can do that. That it's just, I'm not sure that that's where you want to spend your next money on this. So I did 6 comparisons. The first was a small user, assuming a family of 3, which would use about 4,500 gallons inside the city. And I have you all listed in 2 different spots. So if on page 9, coming up from the bottom, the 4th one is City of Calvert City current rates. So what that tells you is for residential customers inside the city, you all have some of the lowest rates in the region. Okay. And then if you look up 3 further up, you have City of Calvert City proposed rates. And this, again, is assuming that full rate increase we talked about last time. That bumps you up 3 more spots, but still has you in the bottom half. Then let's look outside the city.
Gentlemen, I'm gonna have to leave. I'm my inability to manage my personal schedule. I've got to go. Okay. But I appreciate your work and taking us to school on me, and I'll tune back in. I have to go back to remedial lessons on the video when I get a chance. Okay.
Okay. And so on outside the city, on page 10, if you look, you all are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 from the bottom. And on the current rates, and 8th from the bottom on proposed rates. You're still in the bottom half there. Next, we go to what I would call a more typical commercial customer, not your large industrial, but commercial customer with a 2-inch meter using 300,000 gallons. Here, inside the city, your current rates are 5th from the bottom. Your proposed rates are 6th from the bottom. So you all are still in very, very good shape on that, in my opinion.
Remind me on the proposed rates, you were recommending what percentage?
Oh, that was
27% or?
That was on the water, that was 17.8%.
17.8.
Yeah.
So these are all 7.8. These
17.8, yeah.
Thank you.
And then on page 12, the 2-inch meter outside the city. Here, you all are right in about the middle for outside the city rates, because a lot of these folks that we're comparing against only have one set of rates. Okay. And it's not problematic that you all have 2 sets of rates. It's a matter of fact, I would say it's reasonable and appropriate. You have 2 sets of rates, but then you can see for your commercial enterprises, that jumps up 1, 2, 3. You lose 4 slots there. Okay. Now let's go to your industrial customers. This would be a 6-inch meter using 1 million gallons of water a month. Sizable customer. Now on this, you don't have as many comparables because some of these utilities don't have 6-inch meters. They don't have, their systems aren't capable of feeding a 6-inch meter. Some of them have the capability, but they don't have a price for a 6-inch meter. So I had to kind of interpolate, because what would happen is that if a customer came into one of their systems and said, we want a 6-inch meter, they'd say, well, we don't have that in the tariff. I said, well, can you give us a price? And I kind of backed into what I thought the price would be. And so with that, the Calvert City, you all are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from the bottom, and then 3 spots up from that is your proposed rates. So you all on that inside the city, you all still be in the bottom half for your industrial customers. And then coming over here, outside the city, and I don't know if you all have any 6-inch services outside the city.
No.
Yeah, but if you did, you all would be on the top half, or I should say, in the 50th to 75th percentile on that. Okay, so that's where your water rates would be. Again, if you all want to spend your consulting dollars on the sewer rates, we can do that. That's up to you.
Could I just ask the question of Tim, how many of these customers do we have that would use 1 million gallons a month?
Probably 13.
Okay, that's more than what I would have thought. Yeah. Okay.
Remind me the calculation of the sewer rate. How does the sewer rate
2.5
calculate
times.
these?
Wouldn't you say, Chad?
What's the math?
2.5,
13.
2.5 times water rate,
2.5 times the water.
Right.
right? That's the ordinance. Got it?
Well, if that's ordinance.
The 2.5 number, this would be their number.
That was the ordinance we got the last meeting.
And on water rates, you all have a series of steps that you take people through.
Right.
And on the sewer, you've got a flat rate and then all consumption after 2,000 gallons.
Flat rate.
I'm
Based
sorry, what I
on
call
the- Yeah, no, flat rate. Yeah, I know what you're saying. But I'm saying the flat rate is based on which water rate calculation, because you said that the water's here. So 2.5 times which rate? Which water rate?
Averaging.
Versus 2,000 gallons of
we-
water and then everything above that, sewer, I think.
When I did my calculations, I did it on assuming this existing rate structure, what percentage across the board increase. So I didn't do a comparison between the water and sewer rates to set the sewer rates.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's go to the last strategic question, and that's on affordability. And we've talked about this a little bit. How will issues of affordability for low-income customers be addressed so that they have access to safe drinking water? This was an important issue to many of you all. A hard case answer would be, if you can't afford your water bill, you got problems we can't solve. But that doesn't address the reality of some people can't afford their water bill. And so with that, there's 3 things that utilities typically do. First is have leak adjustment policies that are not punitive at all. If somebody has a leak, we can adjust the bill back, assuming that they get the leak repaired. The second thing is if they have a large bill, put them on a payment plan so that they have 3 months, 6 months, maybe even a year to pay off the balance. Let me chase a rabbit here. In New Orleans, they had what I would call illiberal adjustment policies. They would not, if you had a leak, it's the same as if you used it on purpose. Okay. My problem is if you have a leak, if it's underground leak, you don't know it. And you don't find out till you get the bill. And it's like, I wouldn't have allowed the leak to go on. And so with that, New Orleans they wouldn't adjust the bills much at all, but they would allow payment plans. Well, people ended up where their water bill balance was as large as their car note. Well, sometimes people are forced into what's called perverse decisions, where it makes more sense to become a scofflaw and change the water bill into the name of their parakeet and walk away from their old bill than it is to keep the bill and pay it. Because sometimes their water bill balance was higher than their car note. Okay. And so And you all have the ability to make your adjustment policy whatever you want it to be, and I would encourage you to take a good hard look at it. In some states, particularly in the Old South, they don't allow, it's against the state constitution to allow adjustments on water bills, because the argument is a water bill is property of the state, or as a city being a political subdivision of the state, a water bill is the property of the state, and you don't have the right to adjust that off because you're essentially giving away state property. So that's what the law was in Louisiana and Mississippi. When I went through that, when I was in both of those states, I worked through the legislature, and both times when I took to the legislature, the first time they said, no, drop dead, go away. Second time we took it back, and after they thought about it for a while, they were passed unanimously or nearly unanimously to allow municipalities to adjust the water bills as the municipality determined appropriate. And so you all already have that right here in Kentucky. And so with that, again, the three things is leak adjustment policies, payment plans, and then the third one is voluntary customer contributions towards helping low-income customers. You've seen it on some bills where, round up, or something like that. You see that at when you go to McDonald's, you want to round up your bill for Ronald McDonald House and things like that. You can also have certain community action programs provide funding to help pay for water bills. A lot of folks go to their churches, and that's something you all want to decide. Do you really want people going to their church and having church funds that are intended for the Lord's work going to water bills? Again, that's a policy decision for you all. What I think you have an opportunity here is to say, we're going to set up a program that says, if you're already receiving some form of federal subsidy, that you're eligible, if your water bill goes, say, above $50, we'll provide tax assistance to pay for all or some portion of the amount above $50. It's that type of thing that you all have. Right now, when I look at your water bills, there's two things that drive affordability. One of them is how high is the water bill, and the other one is how poor is your community. You all water bills are not, regionally, they're not that high. And I would think regionally, your community is as affluent or more than other neighboring communities. I don't have that data, but that's the type of thing that you want to look at. What I always encourage is don't focus on the overall rate increase. Target your assistance programs so that the folks that need it the most get that help. So with that, we went through and we did that. And then in the back again, and I'm sorry for the small font, but this walks you through what the financial plan would look like. Let's go back and then what do you want to see next? Okay.
Well, let's talk an assumption.
Okay.
Let's go back to the beginning. Right. And let's go to the big number, two big numbers on page 2.
On
page 2, after number 8, at the meeting, is additional annual revenue,
right,
of 300 and 400,000 would do what? Why are those numbers there? You're saying if we added that much revenue, 850,000 roughly,
yes,
then we would be able to address everything, and I assume including depreciation.
Yes.
Yes. And that's what's missing. Is that the big source of why those two numbers are so huge?
The biggest reason is because of depreciation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the way we've been doing this around here is grants and loans. Right, in terms of handling
and
those
tax
big capital
Yes.
things,
Well, and
some
loan-
depreciation.
yeah, loans mainly, and this year we've been fortunate enough to get several grants.
Right.
Uh,
And how many
larger
loans
grants.
are we carrying right now? 5 loans. And historically, we've always had loans, right?
And your loan, your debt load isn't that onerous. The other thing is, again, you all sometimes use tax money, and the city doesn't loan the tax money to the utilities. It just gives the tax money to the utilities.
It does, but don't we have some kind of thing we are paying back one of those
You
to
are
the city?
infrastructure, but you know, when the city was paying for the.
They have paid for
Storage
things.
tank,
Ground storage tank.
they just paid for it.
But I did.
Tax dollars.
And again, so we're back to tax dollars, right? So, yeah, and so that's what I wanted to see is that number just, how are we getting by if we're that short? Because we never
Well,
seem to.
If we get, I mean, if you look on page two on the trial balance, you can see that we have indebtedness of just running down Cypress Lakes, there's still 370,000.
Give me a number or a name. Under-
242.
Say again.
Start about 242.
Thank
on the
you.
second page.
So, yeah, I see
411,
notes.
242, 68, 2,200,000. So
No, those are our balances right now.
those are balances, open balances right now on projects that we've done and completed, we borrowed the money for.
Those are the balances of those loans at this time, which are,
Yeah, through KIA.
looks like a
Yes,
million
that's right.
sitting there on those 3 notes. And then we've got underneath that notes payable to KIA 246. Current notes payable 251, is that another one? Cypress Lake project.
Yeah.
Who's that?
I
I
mean, that's the way
personally-
we've been living is that way. And then
Yeah.
and also the city has been generous on some projects
Yeah.
to assist us with, and then we've been able to get grants. So, I mean, we've done all the above.
And personally, I don't like loans if I don't have to. I took a mortgage, I don't like to borrow money and if the city didn't have to, I'd love it. But there's gonna be pain with that. And you're trying to give us all sorts of options here. How are you if you're gonna live a different way, if you're gonna sustain this place?
Well, let's go back to the first point you made, which is how are we getting by if we got this big of a hole in our pocket? And the answer is you don't have a cash hole in your pocket. You're making, you've got enough cash coming in to cover the cash that's going out. The problem that you have though is, well, if you've got cash coming in and cash going out, your system's getting old.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the point. And so why I was recommending that you at least know what that big number is it because that covers your cash coming in, your cash going out, and some portion of your system that's aging.
Yes.
Okay. And so,
Yeah, I mean, we kind of know about it in the sense that we're looking at it anywhere from an 8 million to an $18 million sewer.
In Nashville, we had a very favorable interest rates through these loans. I mean, you're talking about 2% interest rates. I don't know that in the future.
We can count on
We
that.
can count on that. If it goes up to
That's the other
7%,
side of it.
then you're really talking catastrophic
Yep.
impacts if it goes up.
I got
you
you.
all haven't asked me, but I think it might be helpful if I've told you what I would do if I was you. If I was you, I would probably not consider not funding depreciation at this time. Because part of it is funding depreciation is a great theory, but you don't have a plan on where you're going to spend it. Okay. So with that, What you might want to do is spend some money on building that, what's my capital plan going to be? Long-term, and I like 20 years, but there hardly any utilities out there plan 20 years. They either do. Most utilities try to get through the next year or two, okay? There's three types of utilities. They know what, first tier is the utilities that know what their needs are and they know what they're going to do. The second tier is they know what their needs are, but they don't know how they're going to pay for it. And then the third tier, they don't even know what their needs are. Okay. What I would encourage you is spend some money to get a 5-year or 10-year capital plan so that you know what you need, and then figure out how are we going to pay for that? How much of it is going to be through rates, and plus debt service, or rates plus debt service plus depreciation. Because the fact of the matter is, it'll take you a couple of years to get a good financial plan developed. I mean, a good facilities plan developed.
What assumptions did you make when you were coming up with the 354 and the 497? You had to assume some needs. How did you do that?
No, actually I didn't.
He didn't.
What I did is I said, well, the assumptions that I made was, let's recover your budgeted operating cost. Let's recover the average of your next 3 years of debt service cost. And let's recover all of your depreciation costs.
So historic, you use the historic depreciation?
Yes.
Okay.
But again, the flaw in my recommendation is you'll have cash that you don't have plans for. You'll have needs for, you just don't have planned out what your needs are. And my belief is going to sell a rate increase to the public and saying, we're going to need this money someday. That dog don't hunt real well. Okay. As much as if you said, we've invested and we've got a 5-year or a 10-year plan, and we want to fully fund this plan, and here's how we're going to fund it. We're going to fund this much from water revenues, this much from debt, this much from depreciation. That would be my advice, is don't bite the depreciation bullet yet. The next one is,
we've done the 5-year plans and have some 5-year plans, but it's been 2 or 3 years since we've actually sat down and seriously looked at that.
and they part of it, you want to make sure that your 5-year plan takes care of the infrastructure replacement and renewal needs, but some of it is how much growth are we going to pursue, and what facilities do we have to have in place for that, and also the changes in technology. Because my advice is, information technology is so expensive that may be underrepresented in your capital plan. And here's another thing. I like borrowing money when interest rates are low. I wanted to borrow money 30 years. Okay. When I bought my house, my wife said, we won't even be alive then. And I said, they're giving the money away at 2.5%. Let's take it. And I said, let's not argue with them, but anything that has an average life of less than 10 years, I don't want to borrow money on it. I want to pay for that on a pay as you go basis. And I definitely want to pay for growth. And let's say I want to pay for new technology at my plant. Let's say you have water quality right now that meets all of the regulatory requirements, but you want to compete and have the best water in the state. And you want to have, whether it's, type of microfiltration or ozone treatment or anything like that, pay for that with that. But when it comes to buying information technology, when it comes to buying fleet, trucks, backhoes, things like that. My advice is to as much extent possible, pay for that out of cash. But so first advice is don't go after depreciation. That's my first. That drops your rates, I think, on water to zero, rate increase on water to zero, and on sewer to half. Next thing I would do is I would probably do that revenue and cost shifting that I talked about. Okay, and take your non-operating revenues, apply them to the sewer, take your operating expense, the overhead expenses, apply them to water. That would be my second choice, or my second recommendation. Along with that, then I would say in about 3 years, when you got your financial, when you've got your capital plan, then do a long-range financial plan and what's called a cost of service study. So that, because right now, when you start doing cost shifting, you start really getting away from those, that principle I had where water pays for water, sewer pays for sewer. You can get away from that for a while, but you don't want to get too far away from it. Third thing I would recommend is do you want to have across the board increases, or do you want to have different increases for different levels of consumption? For example, if you happen to have brought your water rate study in there, it has what your rates are, and you all have different minimum bills, and then 3 rate blocks. You can assign different rate increases to different size services and to different rate blocks. Now, the good news is you've got that discretion. The bad news is when you do rate increases, if you do them across the board, everybody's mad at you. But if you do differential rate increases, then what happens is you're creating what's called winners and losers, where the people who get the lowest rate increases, well, they're winning. And the people who get the highest rate increases, they're losers. And then they're mad at you and they're mad at each other. So I typically like across the board rate increases, but at some point you probably want to do what's called a cost of service study that says how much are my low usage customers costing, my low usage residential customers, how much are my high usage residential customers, how much are my low and high end commercial customers, how much are my industrial customers, because right now you don't know whether you're having what's called intra-class rate subsidy. You don't know if your industrial customers are subsidizing your residential or vice versa. But in the short term, my advice would be do rate increases across the board and don't dive in. But if you wanted to, you could. And start saying, well, I want this and I want that. The other thing that you can do as your final option is to say, I want equal rate increases for water and sewer. And say, if I'm going to have the same rate increase for water and sewer and not cover depreciation and move the overhead expenses and the non-operating revenue, what rate increase would it be across the board for everybody, water and sewer? Following?
Does our cost of living hit sewer?
Yeah.
Our cost of living on the water hits the sewer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it goes up as well when
Yeah.
we do that.
And on that, my advice is this year, implement rate increase and suspend the cost of living and then implement the cost of living again next year. But the thing is, what you all want, I think, right now in the short term is a simple story to tell. And because you don't want to get complex until you've got the whole story, and you don't have the whole story until you have your facilities plan. You follow me? Okay. So now's the question, what do you want me to do next?
Okay, let us absorb what you've given us. Let us talk and,
If you all still have
We'll
plenty
get back
of,
with
you'll still got plenty of budget money left on your project?
how we doing on that? You said we got-
I don't have it in front of me, but all I know is y'all are. You've still got plenty.
Okay.
Okay.
Stimulant.
Is there any, yeah, I'll do that tomorrow. Is there any other questions that I can answer? Did this make sense? Did this accomplish what you were looking for?
I think it's gonna be a big help for us to use and study and whatnot. So right now, we'll look at this and talk about it but I think we got some good working ideas and whatnot, so.
You all brought me some good challenges last time, and I frankly, I enjoyed that. And but my job is. It's not my car and I don't get to drive it. But what I can do is say, here's where the steering wheel is, here's where the brake is, here's where the gas pedal is, here's how you change gears. And where do you want to go and how fast you want to get there? And then I'll show you.
Before you walk out, could you, you've hit some, I mean, this last little bit, what would I do if it was my car?
Mhm.
Could you prioritize, oversimplify and prioritize which of those issues do you think would be most efficient and effective for this board to consider?
And what I can
In
do
what
is send a summary of this report, which I did last time.
Right, yeah. Mhm.
And a facilities plan, considering how you're gonna implement a rate increase, either by user category or across the board, or, you know.
The two things that I would prioritize is, first of all, I would create a simple to tell, simple to explain, simple to understand rate increase approach. Okay, that's the first thing I would do. Because again, customers deserve to understand what's happening to them. The second thing I would do is do the facilities plan. And then the third thing I would do is, get whatever rate increase you go with, get it implemented, but then put on your calendar, your board calendar. We want to do a financial plan and full cost of service study in 3 years. That's the simple 1, 2, 3 of it.
What was the third one again? Say it again.
That if the first one is create a rate approach that's easy to explain, easy to understand. Second is fund and execute a facilities plan.
Right.
And the third is build a financial plan to pay for it and have a cost of service rate study funded.
Yeah, put that in an email back to me.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Bob.
And
I appreciate
so
you coming
the
down
good
and
news
spending
is
time with us.
That you all have very good alternatives to not be looking at an 80% rate increase on sewer. Okay.
All right. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Need
No.
unless somebody got anything else, a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I have something else here. Item 4. I don't think we did it on the agenda.
On the outside use on our sewers or.
Reviewing bill policy rates between city and county.
That's what I'm.
Greg.
I would pass that off
That's
to
what I'm
Greg.
gonna do.
Greg's gonna take care of it.
It's
It's the next one, number
Yeah.
5. Multiple locations
Yeah.
of city sewer with third-party
Third
companies.
party.
We'll get back into that. What we've
Okay,
got
fine.
is,
It's okay.
we've got several places that are dumping into the sewer system. And we don't know that they're following section 50 point something.
Yeah.
and need to be looking into that. And Gene has been asking me to do some investigation on that, and Tim's been looking into it, and
Are we talking about illegal dump?
We don't know.
Unauthorized dumping?
we don't know.
Okay.
And at this
Well,
point,
what's
I'd rather,
he's got evidence, you got evidence somewhere if something's happening. Why are we investigating this?
Suspicion.
let me have a motion to adjourn, please.
Oh, right. I move, we adjourn this meeting.
I second that motion.
Okay, a
And let
motion
me-
a second.
Just give me time.
I know.
6:09.
I don't know.